The giant space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between the stars. It was bigger than most cities, made of metal and crystal that sparkled in the light from nearby suns. Inside the station, in a room made of clear blue crystal, 12 different alien species sat around a huge round table. Captain Jake Morris sat very still in his chair. He was human, and right now he felt very small. To his left sat Ambassador Lisa Grant, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. To his right was Admiral Pete Collins, an older man with scars on his hands from old battles. They were the only humans in the room. The other chairs held creatures that looked like nightmares or dreams. The Zephyrian Chancellor was tall and thin, with skin you could see through like glass. When he moved, light seemed to dance inside his body. Next to him sat a Korthak, a huge lizard-like being with teeth as long as Jake's fingers. Its red eyes never stopped watching the humans. There were others too. The Vorthan looked like living crystals that changed colors when they thought. The Nexari had too many arms and eyes that glowed purple. Each species was older than human civilization. Each one had ruled the stars for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. The Zephyrian Chancellor stood up. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. But his words were not gentle at all. "We have called this meeting because of a problem," he said. "The problem is humanity." Jake kept his face blank, but inside his heart was beating fast. Lisa's hand stayed folded on the table, but he could see her knuckles were white. Pete just stared straight ahead like a statue. The Chancellor continued. "In 50 years, humans have spread to more than 200 worlds. You build colonies faster than any species we have ever seen. You make friends with everyone you meet. You trade with all of us. But we have been watching. We have been thinking. And we have decided that humans are dangerous." A low growl came from the Korthak representative. His name was War Leader Thask, and he was even bigger than most of his kind. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Dangerous and sneaky," Thask said. "You humans smile and shake hands, but you are always asking questions. Always wanting to know about our worlds, our ships, our weapons. Why do you need to know so much?" Lisa spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm and polite. "We ask questions because we want to learn. We want to be good neighbors." A sound like breaking glass came from the Vorthan delegate. It was laughing, but not in a nice way. The crystal being's colors shifted to angry red and orange. "Good neighbors do not build warships," it said in a voice like ringing bells. "Good neighbors do not hide weapons in cargo ships. Good neighbors do not put military bases on every world they touch." Jake's heart beat faster, but his voice stayed steady. "We build defenses because space is dangerous. Pirates, wild animals, accidents. We need to protect our people." "Lies," hissed another voice. This came from a slick, a snake-like creature with 6 arms. "We have studied your cargo ships. They carry sensors that can map entire star systems. They have computers that record everything they see. You are not traitors. You are spies." The room fell silent for a moment. Jake could hear the soft hum of the station's power systems. He could hear Pete breathing slowly and steadily beside him. He could hear his own pulse in his ears. The Zephyrian Chancellor sat back down. The light in his transparent body seemed dimmer now, more serious. "We have made a decision," he said. "Humanity has grown too fast and learned too much. You are young and aggressive. You do not respect the old ways. You do not follow the rules that have kept peace in the galaxy for 10,000 years. Lisa leaned forward slightly. "What rules?" "No one told us about any rules when we first met you." "The rules are simple," the Chancellor replied. "Older species guide younger ones. Wiser races make decisions for foolish ones. Strong civilizations protect weak ones. This is how it has always been." War Leader Thask stood up. Even sitting down, he was taller than most humans when they stood. Standing up, he looked like a mountain with teeth. "Here is what will happen," he said. "Humanity will stop building new colonies. You will stop building new ships. You will give us control of your military. You will let us put advisors on all your worlds. You will follow our laws and our customs. You will become good children of the galaxy like all the others." Jake looked around the table. Every alien face was looking at him and his companions. Some looked angry, some looked sad, some looked hungry, like they were planning to eat something tasty, but all of them looked certain that humans would agree. "And if we say no?" Pete asked quietly. The Korthak's laugh sounded like an earthquake. "Then we will make you say yes. We have been ruling the stars since before your world had trees. We have weapons that can crack planets. We have ships that number in the millions. What do you have? A few hundred worlds and some clever tricks?" The Nexari delegate spoke for the first time. Its purple eyes glowed brighter as it talked. "Do not think this is punishment. This is education. You will learn to be civilized. Your children will thank us someday." The Zephyrian Chancellor nodded. "We are not cruel. We do not want to hurt anyone. But the galaxy has an order. Everyone must know their place. Humans are new. Humans are small. Humans are children. Children must obey their elders." Jake looked at Lisa, then at Pete. Both of them looked back at him. In their eyes he saw something that the aliens probably could not recognize. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was something much more dangerous. It was the look of humans who had just been told what they could not do. Lisa stood up slowly. Her voice was still polite, still calm. "This is a very big decision. We need time to think about it. We need to talk to our people back home." "Of course," the Chancellor said. He sounded pleased, like a teacher whose student had finally understood a hard lesson. "You have 72 hours. That should be enough time to see reason." The three humans gathered their papers and tablets. They said goodbye politely to each alien delegate. They walked toward the door with steady steps. But as they left, Jake heard the Korthak say something to the others in his own language. Pete's face did not change, but Jake knew that Pete understood Korthak speech. Later, Pete would tell him what War Leader Thask had said. "Mammals always break when you squeeze them hard enough." The door closed behind them with a soft whisper. The aliens began talking among themselves, already planning how to divide up human space. They were so busy planning that they did not notice something important. None of the humans had looked scared when they left, and none of them had said they would agree to the demands. They had only said they needed time to think. The human quarters on Nexus Prime were small and plain, 3 rooms with metal walls and basic furniture. Nothing fancy, nothing special, just like the aliens expected humans to be. Jake Morris sat at a small table with Lisa Grant and Pete Collins. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of air recyclers. Lisa had her tablet out, but the screen was black. Pete was cleaning his glasses, something he always did when he was thinking hard. "Well," Jake said quietly. "That went about as expected," Lisa nodded. "They think we're children. Dangerous children, but still children." Pete put his glasses back on and looked at both of them. "The question is, do we tell them the truth now, or do we let them keep thinking that?" Jake reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device that looked like a credit card. He pressed a button on the side and a soft blue light appeared. The light meant the room was now safe from listening devices. The aliens were probably trying to spy on them, but human technology had some surprises. "Let's start with what they don't know," Lisa said. She touched her tablet, and the screen came alive. Numbers and star charts filled the display. "They think our merchant ships are just for trade." Pete smiled for the first time since the meeting. "Captain Steve Mitchell would find that funny. His ship looks like a cargo hauler, but it has sensors that can map a solar system in 3 days. Same with Karen Wright's vessel. The aliens let them visit every major world in Council space, thinking they were buying and selling goods. How many systems have we mapped?" Jake asked. Lisa's fingers moved across the tablet. "All of them. Every Council world, every military base, every trade route, every resource depot. We have complete intelligence on 12 civilizations that think we're too primitive to be a threat." The blue numbers on the screen told a story that would have terrified the alien delegates. For 3 years, Human ships had been everywhere in Council space. Ships commanded by people like Captain Tom Brady, Captain Susan Lopez, and Captain Bill Rogers. The aliens thought these were just merchant captains trying to make money. They were wrong. They were military intelligence officers, and they were very good at their jobs. "What about our technology assessment?" Jake asked. Pete took over the tablet. New charts appeared showing ship designs and weapon systems. Dr. Alex Turner's team has been busy. Mary Foster cracked their shield technology 2 years ago. Dan Brooks figured out their faster-than-light engines 18 months ago. We didn't just copy their designs, we made them better. Jake studied the numbers. Human ships were faster than anything the Council had. Human weapons were more powerful. Human shields were stronger. The aliens had been so busy feeling superior that they never noticed humans were surpassing them. "And our fleet positions?" Jake asked. This time Lisa smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that would change everything. "The Council thinks our ships are scattered randomly across the galaxy," she said. "They think we build colonies wherever we want without any plan. They're wrong about that too." The tablet screen changed again. This time it showed a three-dimensional map of Council space. Little blue dots marked human ships and colonies. At first glance it looked random, but when Lisa touched a control, red lines appeared connecting the dots. Every major Council world was surrounded. "Admiral Tony Parker has been moving our ships for 6 months," Pete explained. "Every time the Council moved their fleets, we adjusted our positions. They think they're spread out for normal patrols, but we know exactly where they are and we're already in position around their home worlds." Jake stared at the map. "How many ships do we have in position?" "Enough," Lisa said simply. Pete leaned back in his chair. "The Council has been playing a game for 10,000 years. They're used to dealing with young species that are grateful for their guidance. They expect us to beg for mercy and promise to be good. But we're not grateful," Jake said. "No," Lisa agreed. "We're not grateful at all." Jake looked at both of his companions. These were people he had known for years. Lisa was one of the smartest diplomats humanity had ever produced. Pete was a fleet admiral who had never lost a battle. Both of them looked calm, but Jake could see something dangerous in their eyes. "The 72-hour deadline," he said. "They think it's time for us to panic and surrender." "It's not," Pete said. "It's time for them to realize what they're really dealing with." Lisa touched her tablet again. A new screen appeared showing communication logs. "I've been in contact with our people throughout Council space. Captain Laura Bell is in orbit around the Korthak homeworld. Commander Rick Hayes is watching the Zephyrian capital. Captain Nicole Clark has her ship positioned near the Vorthan Crystal Gardens." "Are they ready?" Jake asked. "They've been ready for months," Pete replied. "Every human ship captain knows their job. Every colony administrator knows the plan. Every scientist and engineer knows what to do when the signal comes." Jake stood up and walked to the small window. Outside he could see Council ships patrolling around the station, big impressive vessels that had kept peace in the galaxy for thousands of years. The aliens were so proud of those ships, they had no idea that human vessels were already in position to destroy every important target in Council space. "They made one big mistake," Jake said, still looking out the window. "What's that?" Lisa asked. "They assumed that because we're new, we're stupid. They assumed that because we're small, we're weak. They assumed that because we're friendly, we're harmless." Pete nodded. "The same mistake that every bully makes. They think being nice means being weak." Lisa closed her tablet and put it away. "Should we tell them the truth when we go back to the meeting?" Jake turned away from the window. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard as steel. "No. Let them keep thinking they're in control. Let them keep believing they hold all the cards." "And then?" Pete asked. Jake's smile was colder than space itself. "Then we show them what happens when you threaten humanity." The room fell quiet again. Outside, alien ships continued their patrols, confident and secure. Their crews had no idea that human vessels were watching every move they made. The Council delegates were probably celebrating, sure that humanity would submit to their demands. In 72 hours they would learn how wrong they were, but first, The humans had to go back to that crystal room and give their answer. Though aliens expected surrender. They expected begging and pleading. They were going to get something very different, something that would change the galaxy forever. The crystal chamber looked exactly the same as it had 3 days ago. The 12 alien species sat in their chairs around the big round table. Their faces showed confidence and satisfaction. They had given humanity time to think, and now they expected the right answer. The Zephyrian Chancellor's transparent skin glowed brighter than before. War Leader. Thask's red eyes gleamed with anticipation. The Vorthan delegate's crystal body sparkled with colors that meant happiness. They all looked like hunters who had cornered their prey. Jake Morris walked into the room first, followed by Lisa Grant and Pete Collins. The 3 humans moved slowly and calmly to their seats. Their faces showed nothing. No fear, no anger, no sadness. They looked like people going to a business meeting. This made some of the aliens nervous. They had expected to see humans who looked worried or defeated. Instead, the humans looked like they were exactly where they wanted to be. "Welcome back," the Chancellor said. His voice was warm and friendly, like a teacher greeting students. "We hope you have had time to consider our generous offer." Lisa stood up. She smoothed down her jacket and looked around the table at each alien delegate. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady. "We have indeed considered your offer very carefully," she said. "We discussed it among ourselves. We contacted our government back on Earth. We thought about what it would mean for our people and our future." The Korthak leaned forward in his chair. "And?" he growled. Lisa smiled. It was a small, polite smile that did not reach her eyes. "And we have decided to decline." The word decline hung in the air like a bomb that had not exploded yet. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The aliens stared at the humans as if they had spoken in a language that made no sense. Then War Leader Thask roared. He jumped to his feet, his massive body towering over the table. "What did you say?" "We said no," Jake replied calmly. "Thank you for your offer, but we are not interested." The crystal chamber erupted in chaos. The Nexari delegate's purple eyes blazed with fury. The slick representative hissed and writhed in his chair. The Vorthan's colors shifted to angry reds and blacks. Voices in a dozen different languages shouted at the same time. The Chancellor raised one transparent hand, and the room fell silent. When he spoke, his voice was cold as the space between stars. "You cannot say no. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is reality. You are one small species surrounded by 12 ancient civilizations. You have no choice." Pete Collins stood up next to Lisa. His voice was quiet, but it carried clearly through the chamber. "You are making several mistakes," he said. "First, you assume we are weak because we are young. Second, you assume we are afraid because you are many. Third, you assume we are helpless because you are old." "We do not assume," the Korthak snarled. "We know. We have ruled the galaxy since before your world learned to think. We have weapons that can destroy suns. We have armies that have conquered 1,000 worlds." Jake stood up last. Now all 3 humans were on their feet, facing the assembled might of the Galactic Council. Jake's voice was soft, almost gentle. "You have weapons that can destroy suns," he agreed. "But can you use them? Can you destroy the worlds where your own people live? Because that is where our ships are right now." The aliens looked confused. The Chancellor's glow flickered like a candle in the wind. "What are you talking about?" Lisa reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a simple communication pad, nothing special or threatening. But when she pressed a button on its side, every screen in the chamber came alive. The screens showed space. Dark, star-filled space around different worlds. But the space was not empty. Ships floated in the darkness. Human ships. Dozens of them around each world. Clean, deadly vessels that looked nothing like the merchant ships the Council was used to seeing. The first screen showed the Korthak homeworld. 30 human warships hung in orbit around the red planet like a necklace of death. The second screen showed the Zephyrian capital. 25 human vessels surrounded the crystal cities that floated in the planet's atmosphere. Screen after screen lit up, each showing the same thing. Every major council world, every military base, every center of government and power, all surrounded by human ships that had appeared from nowhere. "Impossible," whispered the Vorthon delegate. "Our sensors would have detected you." "Your sensors did detect us," Pete said. "You just thought we were harmless traders and explorers." Captain Steve Mitchell sends his regards from Korthak Prime. Commander Rick Hayes says hello from Zephyrian. Space. Captain Karen Wright is enjoying the view of your crystal gardens. War Leader Thask's face had gone pale under his scales. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough," Jake replied. "Long enough to map every defense. Long enough to study every weakness. Long enough to position ourselves exactly where we need to be." The Chancellor stood up slowly. His transparent body was flickering now, showing his fear. "What do you want?" Lisa's smile grew wider, but it was still not a nice smile. "We want you to understand something very important. We did not come to your galaxy to be your children. We did not ask for your protection. We did not beg for your guidance." She gestured to the screens around the room, where human ships continued their silent vigil around council worlds. "We came here as equals. We offered friendship and trade. We were willing to learn from you and share with you. But you decided we were too dangerous to be free. You decided we needed to be controlled." Pete stepped forward. "Here is what happens. Now. We are leaving this station. We are going back to our territory. We will continue to build our colonies and live our lives. Any attempt to stop us will be considered an act of war." "You cannot threaten us," this slick hissed. "We are the Council. We are the law." Jake looked at the snake-like alien with eyes as cold as winter. "We are not threatening you. We are informing you. There is a difference." The three humans gathered their things. They moved toward the door with the same calm pace they had used when entering. As they walked, Lisa spoke one more time. "You wanted to know humanity's answer to your ultimatum," she said, without turning around. "There it is on your screens. We choose independence. We choose freedom. We choose to make our own path among the stars." The door opened as they approached it. Just before they stepped through, Pete paused and looked back at the stunned alien delegates. "Oh, and one more thing," he said casually. "You might want to check with your home worlds. I think they have some new neighbors they would like to meet." The door closed behind them with a soft whisper. The crystal chamber fell completely silent except for the hum of electronics and the sound of 12 ancient civilizations trying to figure out how 3 humans had just changed the galaxy forever. On the screens, human ships continued their patient watch, waiting for orders that might never come, hoping for peace but prepared for war. The crystal chamber stayed silent for almost a full minute after the humans left. 12 of the galaxy's most powerful species stared at the screens showing human warships around their home worlds. No one spoke. No one moved. They all looked like they had seen ghosts. The Zephyrian Chancellor was the first to break the silence. His transparent body was flickering like a broken light bulb. "This cannot be real," he whispered. "Our sensors would have seen them coming." War Leader Thask slammed his clawed fist on the table so hard that cracks appeared in the crystal surface. "It is real. Look at the screens. Those ships are there right now." The Vorthon delegates' colors were shifting rapidly between confused blues and terrified purples. "But how? When? We have been watching human space for years. Their ships are slow cargo vessels and small exploration craft." Admiral Corvin, the Nexari military leader, stood up on his 6 legs. His purple eyes were glowing brighter with panic. "Contact the home fleets immediately. I want to know where every council ship is located right now." The next few minutes brought only bad news. Reports flooded in from across council space, each one worse than the last. The Korthak home fleet was 3 days away on training exercises. The Zephyrian patrol ships were scattered across 5 different systems. The Vorthon crystal ships were guarding empty space while human vessels watched their cities. "Impossible," Admiral Corvin kept saying. How did they know where our fleets would be? Dr. Zeresh, the chief Vorthan scientist, was studying readings from the human ships. His crystal body had turned pale white with shock. These energy signatures, he said in a voice like breaking glass. These are not cargo ships, these are purpose-built warships with technology I do not recognize. The Eslick representative was frantically contacting his government. The humans have been in our space for 2 years, he hissed. Captain Laura Bell, Captain Jim Anderson, Captain Nicole Clark. We thought they were traitors. We welcomed them to our worlds. Chancellor Zephyr's glow was getting dimmer as the truth became clear. They were not traitors. They were scouts. Military, intelligence gathering information on every system, every base, every defense. War leader Thask was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. The merchant vessels, the exploration ships, the peaceful colonists, it was all a lie. Not a lie, said Dr. Zeresh quietly. A deception. A very clever, very patient deception. While we were watching for invasion fleets and military buildups, they were mapping our entire civilization with cargo ships and survey vessels. The screens around the room continued showing the same terrible truth. Human ships in perfect formation around every important council world. Ships that had appeared as if from nowhere but must have been moving into position for months. Admiral Corvin was receiving more reports, each one making the situation worse. The human ship near Nexari Prime is broadcasting a message, he announced. Commander Sam Walsh says they are simply ensuring clear communication channels remain open. Clear communication channels? The Chancellor repeated. They are holding guns to our heads and calling it diplomacy. The Korthak was studying tactical displays of the human vessels. What he saw made his blood run cold. These ships are not just positioned randomly. Look at the formations. Every approach route is covered. Every defense platform is targeted. Every escape vector is blocked. Dr. Zeresh had been analyzing the human technology for the past hour. His findings were devastating. Their ships are faster than ours. Their weapons are more powerful. Their shields are stronger. How is this possible? They have only been in space for 50 years. Because they learned from us, the Chancellor said bitterly. We taught them. We shared our knowledge freely because we thought they were primitive children who could never threaten us. The sleek representative had gone very still. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Captain Karen Wright visited our research stations last year. She asked so many questions about our shield technology. We thought she was just curious. Captain Steve Mitchell toured our shipyards, admitted Admiral Corvin. He wanted to understand how we build our fastest vessels. We were proud to show him. Dr. Alex Turner attended our science conferences, added Dr. Zeresh. He met with our best engineers and researchers. We shared everything with him because we believed humans were our friends. War Leader Thask stopped pacing and looked at the others with eyes full of rage and fear. They were never our friends. They were studying us, learning our weaknesses, planning this from the very beginning. The truth hit all of them at the same time like a physical blow. For 3 years, humanity had been conducting the most successful intelligence operation in galactic history. While the Council saw harmless traitors and eager students, humans had been systematically gathering every piece of information they needed to checkmate the entire galaxy. What do we do now? Asked the Nexari Admiral. The question hung in the air like poison gas. What could they do? Their fleets were out of position. Their home worlds were surrounded. Their technology had been surpassed by a species they had dismissed as children. Chancellor Zephyr tried to contact the human fleet directly. The response came from Commander Rick Hayes aboard a vessel called the Thunderbolt. The human's voice was polite, almost friendly. This is Commander Hayes. How can I help? You today? You can help by removing your ships from our space immediately, the Chancellor said, trying to sound authoritative. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, Hayes replied. We're not in your space. We're in international space, maintaining peaceful orbits around various worlds, completely legal under galactic law. You are threatening our people. Threatening? Sir, we're just making sure everyone can communicate clearly during these important negotiations. Wouldn't want any misunderstandings, would we? The connection ended, leaving the council delegates staring at each other in helpless fury. They are mocking us, growled War Leader Thask. No, said Dr. Zeresh sadly. They are teaching us what it feels like to be helpless, teaching us what it means to have no choices. The Vorthon scientists' colors shifted to deep, sad blue. We offered them subjugation, and they responded with demonstration. We threatened them with force, and they showed us superior force. We tried to make them children, and they proved they are already adults. Around the table, the representatives of 12 ancient civilizations sat in stunned silence. For the first time in 10,000 years, they faced a species that would not bow, a species that had quietly, patiently, brilliantly outmaneuvered them completely. The humans had not conquered through destruction. They had conquered through preparation. They had not won through violence. They had won through intelligence. And now the galaxy would never be the same. 6 hours after the humans walked out of the crystal chamber, every screen in council space lit up with the same message. Jake Morris sat in the captain's chair of the TFS Liberty, humanity's flagship. Behind him stood Lisa Grant and Pete Collins. In front of him was a camera that would broadcast his words to billions of beings across the galaxy. People of the galaxy, Jake began, his voice calm and clear. This is Captain Jake Morris of the Terran Federation. I am speaking to you from our flagship Liberty, currently positioned in neutral space. He paused, letting his words sink in. On worlds throughout Council territory, aliens stopped what they were doing to listen. This was the first time humans had spoken directly to the galaxy. 6 hours ago, the Galactic Council demanded that humanity submit to their control. They wanted us to stop growing. They wanted us to stop exploring. They wanted us to give up our freedom and become their subjects. Jake's expression did not change, but his voice grew harder. We said no. The camera pulled back to show the bridge of the Liberty. It was clean and efficient, with crew members working at their stations. Everything looked normal, peaceful even. But the ship itself was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Sleek, powerful, and clearly built for war. Some of you are wondering how this is possible, Jake continued. How can one young species challenge the ancient powers of the galaxy? The answer is simple. We prepared. The screen changed to show Captain Steve Mitchell on the bridge of his ship near Korthak Prime. He looked like any human trader, but his vessel was surrounded by Korthak defense platforms that had gone silent and still. While you saw merchants and explorers, Jake's voice continued, we were learning. While you saw curious students asking innocent questions, we were gathering intelligence. While you saw scattered colonies and random trade routes, we were positioning ourselves strategically throughout your space. The view switched to Commander Karen Wright, orbiting the Zephyrian capital. Her ship hung motionless above the crystal cities, like a sword waiting to fall. For 3 years, you taught us everything we needed to know. You showed us your worlds, your defenses, your weaknesses. You did this because you believed we were harmless. You believed we were grateful for your guidance. You believed we would always be children who needed your protection. The broadcast switched back to Jake on the Liberty's bridge. His eyes were cold as space itself. You were wrong. New images appeared on screens across the galaxy. Human colonies that had seemed small and peaceful were revealing their true nature. What looked like farms and mining operations were actually military bases. What appeared to be research stations were advanced weapons facilities. On the world, called New Terra, Captain Ben Taylor was overseeing the deployment of orbital defense platforms that materialized from underground bunkers. The peaceful farming colony was actually a fortress that could protect an entire star system. The Galactic Council believed they were dealing with a species that would be grateful for their wisdom, Jake said. They offered us the choice between submission and destruction. We are offering them a third option. The screen showed Commander Rachel Stone's massive space habitat construction project. What the Council had thought was a simple orbital station was actually a mobile battle platform the size of a small moon. We choose independence. We choose freedom. We choose to write our own story among the stars. Jake stood up from his captain's chair. Behind him, his crew continued their work with quiet efficiency. These were not the desperate actions of a cornered species. These were the calm, measured movements of people who had planned for this moment. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from all agreements with the Galactic Council. We will no longer pretend to follow your laws or respect your authority. We will establish our own territories, make our own alliances, and defend our own interests. The message was being received on every council world, every space station, every ship. Alien leaders who had been confident just hours before were now watching their assumptions crumble. Any attempt to interfere with human colonies will be considered an act of war. Any attack on human vessels will result in immediate retaliation. Any effort to impose your will on our people will be met with force. As if to demonstrate this point, the screen showed a brief clip of a Korthak patrol ship that had tried to challenge a human freighter. Where the patrol ship had been, there was now only empty space and a few pieces of drifting metal. We did not want this confrontation, Jake continued. We came to your galaxy in peace. We offered friendship and cooperation. We were willing to learn from you and share with you. But you decided we were too dangerous to remain free. The view changed one more time, showing the Earth from space. The blue and green world looked small and fragile against the vast darkness. But orbiting around, it were hundreds of ships that had not been there 3 days ago, ships that had returned from across the galaxy to protect their home. This is what you failed to understand about humanity, Jake said. We do not conquer through destruction. We do not rule through fear. We succeed through preparation, patience, and the refusal to accept limits that others try to place on us. The camera focused on Jake's face one final time. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of an entire species behind them. The galaxy is large enough for all of us. We will take our place among the stars, not as your subjects or your enemies, but as your equals. The choice of how we relate to each other from this point forward is yours. The transmission ended, leaving billions of beings across the galaxy in stunned silence. On Nexus Prime, the council delegates sat in their crystal chamber staring at blank screens. They had started the day believing they controlled the galaxy. Now they faced the reality that a species they had dismissed as children had quietly, brilliantly, completely changed the balance of power. War Leader Thask broke the silence first. What do we do now? Chancellor Zephyr's transparent body flickered weakly. Now we learn to live in a galaxy where humanity makes its own rules. In the days that followed, human colonies appeared on dozens of new worlds. Human ships established trade routes that bypassed council space entirely. Human technology advanced at a pace that left alien scientists struggling to keep up. The galaxy that had been ruled by ancient wisdom for 10,000 years was now home to something new. Something that refused to bow, refused to break, and refused to accept that age automatically granted authority. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had simply claimed their place in it, and they had done it so completely, so brilliantly, that the old powers could only watch and wonder how they had missed the signs. The age of council dominance was over. The age of human independence had begun, and the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, as if celebrating the arrival of a species that would never again ask permission to reach for them. The stars were burning out one by one, and Jake Morrison knew humanity was losing the war. He stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, the last human warship still fighting in the outer colonies. Through the thick glass windows, he could see the wreckage of his fleet floating in space like broken toys. 12 ships had started this battle. Now only his remained. "Commander, we're getting a signal from New Austin Colony," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. Her voice was tired. They had all been tired for months now. Jake turned away from the window. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was cracked with static and fear. "This is Colonel Davis from New Austin. The aliens broke through our last defense line. We're evacuating what civilians we can, but the ships, most of our evacuation ships are gone." Jake closed his eyes for a moment. New Austin had 2 million people. Had. How many got out? He asked. Maybe 200,000 in the escape pods. The rest. The transmission cut to static. Amy looked at her instruments. The colony's main transmitter just went dark, sir. Jake nodded slowly. Another human world was dead. In 3 years of war against the Kethmori Empire, this had become normal. The aliens came, they destroyed everything, and they moved on to the next target. On the planet Kronos base, far across the solar system, Colonel Lisa Harper was watching her own screens with growing worry. The fortress world was humanity's strongest military base, but even she knew it would not be enough. "The enemy fleet is bigger than we thought," said Major Pete Sullivan, standing beside her in the command center. "Our scouts count 500 alien ships heading this way." Lisa felt her stomach drop. 500 ships. Her entire defense force had maybe 50 vessels, and most of those were damaged from previous battles. "How long until they get here?" she asked. 72 hours, Pete replied. "Maybe less if they push their engines hard." Lisa looked around the command center. Young soldiers sat at their stations trying to look brave. Most of them had never seen their home worlds. Most of them never would. The Kethmori were not like humans. They were taller, with gray skin and black eyes that showed no emotion. They had better weapons, better ships, and better technology. Worst of all, they had conquered dozens of other alien species before finding Earth. They knew how to destroy entire civilizations. Their leader, War Prime Zethkar, had sent a message to every human colony after the first battles. The message was simple: surrender now or be wiped out completely. When humans refused, the killing began. Back on Earth, in the deep underground bunkers beneath the capital, President Victoria Stone was receiving the worst news of her life. Ambassador Chen Wei sat across from her desk, his face gray with exhaustion. He had just returned from the Galactic Council, humanity's last hope for help in the war. "They voted to withdraw all support," Chen said quietly. "The council members say we're a lost cause. Too many of their own people have died helping us." Victoria stared at the papers on her desk. Reports of destroyed colonies, casualty numbers that made no sense, they were so high, and now this. "So we're alone," she said. "Yes, Madam President, we're alone." In space above Kronos base, Captain Danny Wright was checking his weapons for the 3rd time that hour. His Marine battalion was dug into the defensive positions on the planet's surface, waiting for the alien invasion that everyone knew was coming. "You think we can hold them?" asked Sergeant Maria Santos, cleaning her rifle nearby. Danny looked up at the stars, where enemy ships would soon appear. "We have to try." But privately, he knew the truth. Every military analyst, every computer, simulation, every strategic report said the same thing. Humanity would lose this war. The only question was how long they could delay the end. The Kethmori had advantages in every area. Their plasma weapons could cut through human armor like paper. Their ships had shields that bounced off most human bullets and missiles. Their soldiers were stronger and faster than humans. Most importantly, they had won wars like this before. 43 different alien species had fought the Kethmori Empire. All 43 had lost. Their worlds were now empty or filled with Kethmori colonists. Dr. Elena Foster knew these facts better than anyone. In her research lab on Earth, she had studied every battle, every defeat, every desperate last stand. She was trying to find something, anything that might help humanity survive. "The pattern is always the same," she told her assistant while looking at battle recordings. "The aliens attack with overwhelming force. The defending species fights back with conventional military tactics. When their organized armies are destroyed, they surrender." Her assistant nodded. "Makes sense. Why keep fighting when you can't win?" Dr. Foster paused the recording. On the screen, alien soldiers were walking through the ruins of a city that had belonged to a species called the Veltar. The Veltar had surrendered after their main fleet was destroyed. Within a year, their entire species was extinct. "But what if you don't surrender?" she asked quietly. Chief Engineer Roy Mitchell was asking himself the same question on Haven's Gate, the industrial moon that supplied most of humanity's war materials. His factories were running day and night, building weapons and ships as fast as possible. But it was not fast enough. "We're not going to outproduce them," he told his team during their daily meeting. They have the resources of 100 conquered worlds. We have what's left of 12 human colonies. Susan Clark, his best technician, raised her hand. What if we stop trying to match their technology? What if we focus on what we can build? Fast and cheap? Roy thought about this. Human factories were good at making simple things quickly. They had been doing it since before they reached the stars. Meanwhile, in the deep space between stars, War Prime Zethkar was reviewing the final battle plans aboard his flagship. The massive alien vessel was larger than most human cities, filled with weapons that could destroy planets. The humans will break like all the others, he told his officers. Their organized resistance will collapse within days. After that, we begin the cleansing protocols. The cleansing protocols were simple. Kill everything human. Destroy every human building, every human ship, every human settlement. Leave nothing that could remember humanity had ever existed. It had worked 43 times before. Back on the E. Defiant, Jake Morrison was studying the tactical displays when Amy called out from her station. Sir, I'm picking up massive energy signatures. The main Keth Mori fleet just dropped out of hyperspace near chronospace. Jake looked at the display. Hundreds of red dots appeared on the screen, each one representing an alien warship. His single ship looked very small in comparison. Signal all remaining human forces, he ordered. Tell them this is it. This is where we make our stand. Amy's fingers moved over her controls. Message sent, sir. Jake stared at the tactical display, knowing that in 72 hours the final battle for humanity would begin. Every computer model said they would lose. Every military expert agreed defeat was certain. But as Jake looked around his bridge at the tired faces of his crew, he realized something. The computers and experts had never met humans like these. Humans who had watched their worlds burn and kept fighting. Humans who faced impossible odds and refused to give up. Maybe defeat was certain. But Jake Morrison decided that if humanity was going to die, they would die fighting. The first alien plasma beam cut through the morning sky like a green sword of death. Captain Danny Wright watched from his bunker as the massive energy blast hit the outer defense walls of chronospace. The concrete and steel barriers built to stop any known weapon simply vanished. Nothing was left but glowing metal and smoke. All units, this is it. Danny spoke into his radio. The attack has started. Above him, alien ships filled the sky. They moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting no light. Each ship was the size of a city block, and there were hundreds of them. Another plasma beam struck near Danny's position. The ground shook so hard that several of his Marines fell down. Corporal Ben Taylor got back up, his face covered in dirt. Sir, our anti-aircraft guns aren't even scratching their shields, Ben reported. The shells just bounce off. Danny had expected this. Human weapons were designed to fight other humans, not aliens with technology, hundreds of years more advanced. But he had to try something. Switch to armor-piercing rounds, he ordered. Concentrate all fire on the smallest ships. The human gunners did as ordered, but it made no difference. The alien shields glowed briefly when hit, then returned to normal. Meanwhile, the plasma beams kept falling like rain, turning defensive positions into smoking craters. In space above the planet, Admiral Jake Morrison was learning the same hard lesson. His ship, the Defiant, fired everything it had at the alien fleet. Missiles, energy weapons, even the old-fashioned explosive shells. Direct hits on 3 enemy vessels, reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez. No damage visible. Jake watched the tactical display with growing despair. His weapons were like throwing rocks at a tank. Meanwhile, the alien return fire was tearing his ship apart piece by piece. Hull breach on Deck 7, Amy called out. Emergency bulkheads are holding. Engineering reports main engines at 60% power, added another officer. Jake knew his ship was dying, but he also knew that every minute he kept the aliens busy was another minute for the people on the planet below. Down on Kronos base, Colonel Lisa Harper was coordinating the defense from her underground command center. The reports coming in were all bad. Sector 7 has fallen, Major Pete Sullivan announced. Captain Wright's battalion is pulling back to secondary positions. What about the Eastern Defense Line? Lisa asked. Gone. The plasma bombardment destroyed everything in the first 10 minutes. Lisa looked at the tactical map. Red markers showed where alien forces were landing. Blue markers showed human positions. There were far more red markers than blue ones. "Colonel, we have a communication from Earth," said a young lieutenant. The voice of President Victoria Stone came through the speakers, crackling with static from the jamming systems the aliens were using. "Lisa, I need to know your honest assessment. How long can you hold?" Lisa looked around the command center. Her officers were working frantically, but she could see the fear in their eyes. The walls shook again as another plasma blast hit nearby. "Maybe 6 hours with conventional tactics," she replied. "Maybe less." There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then President Stone spoke again. "Then it's time for Protocol Omega." Lisa felt her blood turn cold. Protocol Omega was a plan that nobody wanted to use. It meant abandoning organized military operations and breaking the army into small groups that would fight like guerrillas. It meant admitting that the regular war was already lost. "Are you sure, Madam President?" "I'm sure. Activate Protocol Omega immediately." Lisa turned to Pete. "You heard her. Send the activation codes to all remaining units." Within minutes, radio messages were going out to every human soldier still fighting. The messages were short and simple. "Forget the rule book. Forget military formations. Forget everything you learned in training. Do whatever it takes to hurt the enemy." Sergeant Maria Santos received the message while hiding in the ruins of what used to be a supply depot. Half of her squad was dead, and the other half was wounded. Under normal military rules, they should surrender or retreat. But Protocol Omega said there were no normal rules anymore. "What does this mean, Sergeant?" asked Private Kevin Walsh, the youngest member of her squad. Maria looked at the alien ships landing in the distance. Troops were pouring out of them, gray-skinned soldiers with weapons that could cut a human in half. "It means we stop fighting like soldiers," she said, "and we start fighting like humans." On the other side of the base, Chief Engineer Roy Mitchell was getting the same message in his workshop. He had been trying to repair damaged weapons and vehicles, but now he had new orders. "Susan, Tony, drop what you're doing," he called to his assistants. "We're not fixing equipment anymore, we're making weapons." Susan Clark looked confused. "What kind of weapons, Chief?" Roy looked around his workshop. It was filled with industrial equipment, mining tools, construction supplies, and chemical containers. Things that were never meant to be weapons. The kind that aliens won't expect, he said with a grim smile. Back in space, Jake Morrison was fighting a losing battle when he received the Protocol Omega activation. His ship was barely holding together, and the alien fleet was preparing to finish him off. "All crew members, this is the Admiral," he announced over the ship's communication system. "We just received new orders. We're no longer fighting a conventional space battle." Amy looked at him with confusion. "Sir, what else can we do? We're outnumbered 100 to 1. Jake studied the tactical display. The aliens were fighting exactly the way their military manuals said they should. Perfect formations, overwhelming firepower, textbook strategy. "We're going to do something they won't expect," he said. "We're going to ram them." The bridge went silent. Ramming an enemy ship was suicide, something that only happened in desperate last stands. "Sir, are you sure?" Amy asked quietly. Jake looked at the alien flagship on his screen. It was massive, probably carrying thousands of enemy soldiers and enough weapons to destroy a planet. "Set course for their command ship," he ordered. "Maximum speed." Meanwhile, down on the planet, the guerrilla war was already beginning. Captain Danny Wright had abandoned his bunker and was moving through the ruins with a small group of Marines. They came across a group of alien soldiers setting up some kind of communication equipment. The aliens were bigger than humans, with thick gray skin that looked like armor. Their weapons hummed with energy. Under normal military tactics, Danny's small group would avoid the larger alien force. But Protocol Omega had different rules. "Corporal Taylor, do you still have those mining charges from the supply depot?" Danny whispered. Ben Taylor nodded, patting a bag full of industrial explosives. "Good. We're going to show these aliens what happens when humans get creative." In her laboratory on Earth, Dr. Elena Foster was analyzing the first battle reports from Kronos base. The numbers were terrible. Human forces were being destroyed at a rate of 10 to 1. Conventional military wisdom said the battle was already over. But something else was happening. Small groups of human soldiers were continuing to fight even after their main units were destroyed. They were using tactics that weren't in any military manual. "This is interesting," she told her assistant. "Look at these reports. Humans are fighting in ways that don't make logical sense." Her assistant read over the data. "They're taking casualties they can't afford, attacking when they're outnumbered, refusing to retreat when they should." Dr. Foster nodded. "Exactly. And somehow it's working. The alien advance is slowing down." She pulled up psychological profiles of the human soldiers. Most other alien species, when faced with overwhelming odds, would surrender to preserve their lives. It was the logical thing to do. But humans, she was beginning to realize, didn't always do the logical thing. High above the planet, Admiral Morrison's ship was accelerating toward the alien flagship. His crew had sealed themselves into their stations, knowing they probably wouldn't survive the impact. 30 seconds to collision, Amy reported, her voice steady despite what was happening. Through the view screen, Jake could see the alien ship, growing larger. Its weapons were firing at the Defiant, tearing holes in the human vessel, but it was too late to stop them now. "All crew, brace for impact," Jake announced. The two ships collided in a flash of light visible from the planet's surface. The alien flagship's shields failed under the impact, and the Defiant's reinforced hull punched deep into the enemy vessel. Both ships exploded, lighting up the dark sky like a new star. On the ground, human soldiers cheered when they saw the explosion. They were still outnumbered, still outgunned, and still losing the war. But for the first time, they had hurt the aliens back. The guerrilla war had begun. Staff Sergeant Carlos Rivera crouched in the darkness, watching 12 alien soldiers set up their camp. They thought they were safe behind their energy shields and advanced weapons. They were wrong. Carlos had been hiding in the ruins of Supply, Depot 9 for 3 days, eating cold rations and drinking muddy water. His squad was gone, his officers were dead, and according to every military manual ever written, he should surrender. Instead, he was planning to kill every alien in that camp. The mining charges Roy Mitchell had built were crude but effective. Carlos had strapped them to a remote-controlled supply drone, the kind used to deliver food to construction workers. The aliens wouldn't recognize it as a weapon until it was too late. He pressed the activation button on his control device. The little drone hummed to life and began moving toward the alien camp, looking like nothing more than a piece of flying junk. The aliens noticed it but didn't seem concerned. Their energy weapons could destroy anything dangerous long before it reached them. What harm could an old supply drone do? Carlos smiled grimly as the drone reached the center of their camp. He pressed the detonation button. The explosion lit up the night sky. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left of the alien camp but a smoking crater. Carlos picked up his rifle and moved to his next target. Across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out everywhere. Humans were fighting, in ways that made no military sense, and somehow it was working. Corporal Helen Brooks had been cut off from her unit for 2 days. She was wounded, hungry, and down to her last few bullets. Any reasonable soldier would have found a place to hide and wait for rescue. Instead, Helen had turned a collapsed overpass into a fortress of death. She had used rubble to create choke points, forcing the aliens to move through narrow passages. She had rigged explosive traps using emergency flares and medical supplies. Most importantly, she had positioned herself where she could hold off an entire alien patrol with nothing but determination and a handful of bullets. "Come on," she whispered to herself as another group of aliens approached her position. "Let's see how tough you really are." The aliens advanced in perfect formation, their weapons ready. They expected to find either a large human force or an empty position. They found Helen Brooks with a rifle and 18 hours of pure stubbornness. The first alien fell to a headshot. The second stepped on one of her improvised mines. The third and fourth died when Helen triggered a controlled collapse that brought tons of concrete down on their heads. By the time the alien patrol retreated, Helen had held her position for another 6 hours and allowed 300 human civilians to escape through the tunnels behind her. Dr. Elena Foster was studying combat recordings in her laboratory when she noticed something strange. Human soldiers were performing far better than their training and equipment should have allowed. Private Kevin Walsh was a perfect example. He had been a supply clerk before the war, with minimal combat training. Now he was moving through alien-controlled territory like a ghost, surviving on contaminated water and destroyed rations while conducting hit-and-run attacks. "Look at this footage," she told her assistant. "This soldier has been in enemy territory for 6 days. He should be dead from radiation poisoning, dehydration, or simple exhaustion." Her assistant watched the grainy video feed from Kevin's helmet. Camera. The young private was setting up an ambush using nothing but wire, explosives, and pieces of broken metal. "How is he still functioning?" the assistant asked. Dr. Foster was beginning to understand. Humans under extreme stress don't just survive. They adapt. They get stronger. She pulled up more files. Soldiers fighting for days without sleep. Marines continuing to fight with wounds that should have been fatal. Engineers building weapons from garbage and kitchen supplies. We're not like other species, she realized. When other aliens face impossible odds, they surrender because it's logical. When humans face impossible odds, they get angry. In the alien command ship orbiting the planet, War Prime Zethkar was receiving reports that made no sense. His forces should have completed the conquest in a matter of hours. Instead, the fighting was getting worse. "Explain this to me," he demanded, of Commander Yethmore, his chief military advisor. "We have destroyed their organized armies. We have superior weapons and numbers. Why is this taking so long?" Commander Yethmore looked uncomfortable. "The humans are not fighting according to standard military doctrine, War Prime. They continue to resist even after suffering unacceptable casualties." "What do you mean?" "For example, we destroyed a human supply depot yesterday. Our forces moved in to secure the area. A single human soldier killed 12 of our troops using improvised explosives before we could eliminate him." Zethkar's black eyes narrowed. "One human killed 12 of our soldiers?" "Yes, War Prime. And this is not an isolated incident. Human resistance fighters are using weapons we did not recognize as weapons. Kitchen knives, construction equipment, even medical supplies have been turned into instruments of war." This was completely outside Zethkar's experience. In 43 previous conquests, enemy resistance had collapsed once their military was defeated. Civilians and surviving soldiers had surrendered rather than face certain death. But humans were different. They seemed to fight harder when things got worse. Back on the ground, Captain Danny Wright was discovering just how different humans could be. His Marine battalion had been reduced to 30 men, but instead of feeling defeated, they were more determined than ever. "Chief Mitchell's workshop is producing some interesting equipment," reported Corporal Ben Taylor, carrying a strange-looking device. "What is it?" Danny asked. "He calls it a plasma cutter mine. It's made from mining equipment and power cells. When an alien steps on it, it cuts through their leg armor like butter." Danny examined the device. It was crude, ugly, and probably violated every safety regulation ever written. It was also brilliantly effective. "How many of these can he make?" "He says his team can produce 50 a day using scrap metal and stolen alien power cells." Danny smiled. This was exactly the kind of creative thinking that Protocol Omega was designed to encourage. Instead of trying to match alien technology, humans were using their own strengths. Chief Engineer Roy Mitchell was indeed working around the clock in his makeshift workshop. With the help of Susan Clark and Tony Garcia, he had turned the place into a weapons factory that would have horrified any safety inspector. "The beauty of these devices," he explained to his team, "is that the aliens don't recognize them as weapons until it's too late." Susan held up what looked like a children's toy. "This one? Remote-controlled explosive. Looks like a broken entertainment device, but it carries enough explosive to destroy an alien vehicle." Tony was working on something that resembled a garden tool. "And this?" "Plasma lance. Designed to look like agricultural equipment. It can punch through alien armor at close range." The aliens had advanced technology, but they also had rigid thinking. They expected weapons to look like weapons, vehicles to look like vehicles, and soldiers to look like soldiers. Humans were throwing out all those assumptions. Meanwhile, the psychological effect of guerrilla warfare was spreading through the alien forces. Soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds were now afraid to leave their camps. Every piece of human debris could be a weapon. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Commander Yethmore was receiving constant reports of alien casualties from attacks that should have been impossible. A construction mech had been converted into a walking fortress that destroyed 3 alien tanks before being stopped. A food processing plant had been turned into a chemical weapons factory. Even human children were building booby traps using school supplies. The humans are fighting with everything they have, he reported to War Prime Zethkar. They are not distinguishing between military and civilian resources. Everything is a weapon to them. Zethkar was beginning to feel something he had never experienced in 200 years of conquest. Uncertainty. "What do you recommend?" he asked. "We could increase the pace of extermination operations. Kill everything human. Destroy every human structure. Leave nothing that could threaten us." But even as he said it, Yethmore knew it wouldn't be that simple. The humans weren't just fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for the right to exist. And that made them far more dangerous than any enemy the Kethmori had faced before. In a collapsed building near the center of Kronos Base, Sergeant Maria Santos was teaching her surviving squad members a new kind of warfare. "Forget everything you learned in basic training," she told them. "The aliens expect us to fight like soldiers. Instead, we're going to fight like humans." Private Kevin Walsh, now a veteran of 6 days behind enemy lines, nodded. "What's the difference?" Maria picked up a piece of broken glass and a roll of medical tape. "Soldiers use proper weapons, humans use whatever works." She wrapped the glass in tape, creating a crude but effective blade. "Soldiers follow rules. Humans make their own rules." She pointed toward the alien patrol moving through the streets below. "Soldiers surrender when they're outnumbered. Humans get creative." As night fell over the burning ruins of Kronos Base, something new was happening in the war between humans and aliens. The organized battle was over, and the humans had lost, but the real fight was just beginning. Major Pete Sullivan crouched in the shadows of a destroyed building, watching the alien commander through his binoculars. The gray-skinned officer was directing the execution of human prisoners in the town square below. Pete counted 12 humans, kneeling in a line, their hands tied behind their backs. Alien soldiers stood behind them with energy weapons raised. A camera was recording everything. "This is War Prime Zethkar speaking to all human forces," the alien commander announced in perfect English. "You see what happens to those who resist the Kethmori Empire. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." Pete watched as the alien soldiers fired. 12 flashes of green light. 12 human lives ended. The message was broadcast to every human radio frequency, every television channel, every communication device still working on 3 different planets. The aliens expected this show of force to break human morale and end the resistance. They were wrong. Lieutenant Colonel Grace Patterson received the broadcast in her hidden command post deep in the mountains of Haven's Gate. She had been coordinating guerrilla attacks across the solar system, but now she had a new mission. "All resistance cells, this is command," she spoke into her radio. "New orders. Every alien officer is now a priority target. No prisoners. No mercy." The response came back from dozens of different locations. Human voices, tired but angry. "Very angry. Copy that, command. It's time to show them what happens when you murder our people." Within hours, the systematic assassination of alien leadership began. Master Sergeant Luke Thompson led a team that infiltrated an alien supply base and eliminated 3 commanders using nothing but knives and determination. They left no witnesses. Across the war zone, similar attacks were happening. Alien officers, who had felt safe behind their technology and superior numbers, suddenly found themselves hunted by humans who seemed to appear from nowhere. The psychological warfare was working both ways now, but humans were much better at it. Chief Engineer Roy Mitchell had made another breakthrough in his improvised weapons program. His team had discovered that human construction equipment, when properly modified, could punch through alien shields using sheer kinetic force. The aliens designed their shields to stop energy weapons and explosive projectiles, he explained, to Susan Clark and Tony Garcia. But they never considered a mining drill moving at 200 miles per hour. They had converted a dozen construction mechs into assault vehicles. The machines looked harmless enough, like oversized construction equipment, but they carried mining lasers, plasma cutters, and hydraulic rams that could crush an alien tank. The beauty of it, Roy continued, is that we're not trying to out-tech them. We're using simple physics. Force equals mass times acceleration, and we've got a lot of mass moving very fast. The first field test came when an alien patrol encountered what looked like a broken-down construction mech by the side of the road. The aliens approached to investigate, thinking it might contain useful salvage. Instead, the mech suddenly came to life. Its mining laser carved through the alien vehicles like paper. Its hydraulic arms crushed anything that got too close. By the time the attack was over, the entire alien patrol was destroyed. Dr. Elena Foster was documenting these changes in human behavior from her laboratory on Earth. Her research was revealing something extraordinary about human psychology under extreme stress. "Look at these coordination patterns," she told her assistant, pointing to combat footage. "Soldiers who have never worked together before are operating in perfect synchronization." The assistant watched as Sergeant Rachel Adams and Corporal Mike Johnson moved through an alien stronghold. They seemed to know exactly what the other was thinking, communicating without words or radio signals. "How is that possible?" the assistant asked. "I think humans develop enhanced group awareness when faced with survival situations," Dr. Foster explained. "It's like they become a single organism with multiple bodies." This phenomenon was happening everywhere. Human resistance fighters were coordinating attacks across vast distances with no central command. They were sharing resources, information, and tactics as if they had a telepathic connection. The aliens had never encountered anything like it. In the alien command ship, War Prime, Zethkar was facing the first military crisis of his career. His forces controlled most of the territory, but they were taking casualties at an unacceptable rate. "How many officers have we lost this week?" he asked Commander Yethmore. 47, War Prime, all killed in targeted assassinations. Zethkar's anger was growing. "And our ground forces? We lose approximately 50 soldiers per day to improvised attacks. The humans are using tactics we have never seen before. The reports coming in were unlike anything in Kethmori military history. Humans were fighting with weapons made from garbage. They were turning civilian equipment into instruments of war. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to feel no fear of death." "Show me the psychological analysis," Zethkar demanded. Yethmore activated a holographic display. "Our experts believe the humans have entered a collective state of controlled rage. They are no longer fighting for victory. They are fighting for revenge." This was completely outside alien understanding. Every other species the Kethmori had conquered fought to win or to survive. When those goals became impossible, they surrendered. But humans seemed to fight harder when winning became impossible. They had moved beyond survival into something the aliens couldn't comprehend. Back on the surface, Captain Danny Wright was leading his reduced Marine unit through the ruins of what used to be the main city on Kronos base. His men had been fighting for weeks with minimal supplies and no reinforcement. By all military logic, they should have been defeated long ago. Instead, they were stronger than ever. "Contact front," whispered Corporal Ben Taylor, pointing toward an alien checkpoint ahead. Danny studied the position. 6 alien soldiers with heavy weapons protected by energy barriers and automated defenses. A month ago, his entire battalion couldn't have taken that position. Now he was going to do it with 8 Marines and a bag of tricks Roy Mitchell had built. "Thompson, Rodriguez, circle left with the plasma mines," he ordered quietly. "Taylor, Johnson, take the magnetic charges and go right. Santos, Walsh, you're with me on the direct assault." His Marines moved without question. They had learned to trust each other completely, and they had learned that human creativity could overcome alien technology. The attack began when the plasma mines detonated under the alien vehicles. The explosions weren't large, but they were precisely placed to disable the aliens' heavy weapons. While the aliens were confused, the magnetic charges attached to their energy barriers The devices looked like broken electronics, but they generated electromagnetic pulses that overloaded alien shield generators. Finally, Danny's assault team hit the checkpoint from 3 directions at once, using modified mining tools and pure aggression. The aliens never had a chance to coordinate their defense. Within minutes, the checkpoint was in human hands. More importantly, the aliens inside were all dead. The human resistance had stopped taking prisoners after the execution. Broadcast. The psychological impact on alien forces was devastating. War Prime Zethkar had wanted to terrorize humans into submission. Instead, he had created an enemy that felt no mercy and showed no quarter. Alien soldiers were now afraid to leave their fortified positions. Every patrol could be their last. Every mission could be a trap. Every piece of human equipment could explode without warning. Commander Yethmore was receiving reports that his troops were developing what humans would call battle fatigue. Alien soldiers who had conquered worlds were now having nightmares about human children with bombs hidden in their school supplies. "The humans are using our own strengths against us," he reported to Zethkar. "Our advanced technology makes us dependent on complex systems. When humans disable one component, entire weapon systems fail. And our superior firepower? Useless when we cannot find targets. The humans blend into the civilian population. They hide in places our sensors cannot detect. They attack from directions we do not expect." Zethkar studied the tactical displays. His forces still controlled most of the territory, but they were trapped in isolated strongholds. The humans owned everything in between. "What do you recommend?" he asked. Yethmore hesitated. In 200 years of military service, he had never faced a situation like this. "War Prime, I believe we need to consider the possibility that this campaign cannot be won using conventional methods." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The Kethmori Empire had never failed to conquer a species, never been forced to consider retreat, never faced an enemy that refused to accept defeat. But humans were different. They had taken the worst the aliens could give them and turned it into fuel for their anger. They had lost every major battle and somehow made themselves stronger. As night fell over the war-torn worlds, human resistance fighters prepared for another round of attacks. They had no grand strategy, no ultimate weapon, no hope of military victory. All they had was the absolute refusal to give up, and somehow that was enough. In the darkness between the stars, something fundamental had changed in the balance of galactic power. For the first time in centuries, the unstoppable Kethmori war machine had been stopped, not by superior technology or brilliant strategy, but by simple human. 6 months after the day that was supposed to mark humanity's defeat, something impossible was happening across 3 star systems. The humans were winning. Colonel Lisa Harper stood in what used to be War Prime Zethkar's command center on Kronos base. The alien leader sat in restraints, his black eyes staring at her with something she had never seen in an alien before: fear. "You wanted to study how humans fight," Lisa said quietly. "Now you get to see it up close." Through the windows of the command center, Zethkar could see human soldiers moving through the base. They were not the organized army he had expected to face. These were guerrilla fighters who had learned to make weapons from scrap metal and turn every piece of technology into a tool of war. A young human soldier, barely old enough to be called an adult, walked past carrying a device that looked like a children's toy. Zethkar knew it was actually a remote-controlled explosive that could destroy an alien tank. "Your species fascinates our scientists," Lisa continued. "You conquered 43 different alien races. Every one of them surrendered when they realized they could not win." Zethkar remained silent, but his eyes followed every human who passed by the window. "But humans don't work that way," Lisa said. "When we realize we can't win, we decide to change the rules." In space above the planet, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a ship that should not have existed. The UES Defiant had been destroyed months ago when he rammed it into the alien flagship, but Chief Engineer Roy Mitchell had somehow built a new vessel from the wreckage of both ships. The new Defiant was not beautiful. It was a patchwork of human and alien technology, held together with determination and welding equipment. But it worked, and it was leading a fleet of similar vessels. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 12 more alien ships," reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, who had somehow survived the collision and explosion months earlier. Jake looked at the tactical display. The alien fleet that had once numbered 500 ships was down to less than 50. The rest had been destroyed, captured, or had simply fled the system. "Tell them the same thing we told the others," Jake said. "Unconditional surrender only. No negotiations." This was not the way wars usually ended. Typically, when one side was clearly losing, both sides would negotiate terms to minimize further casualties. But humans had stopped being interested in minimizing casualties after the execution broadcast. Down on the planet's surface, Dr. Elena Foster was documenting the final stages of what historians would later call the most unusual military victory in galactic history. The human forces never actually defeated the aliens in a traditional sense, she dictated to her recording device. They simply refused to lose until the aliens gave up trying to win. Her research had revealed the key difference between humans and every other species the Kethmori had encountered. Other races fought until defeat became certain, then surrendered to preserve their lives. Humans fought until defeat became certain, then fought harder. The aliens had superior technology, greater numbers, and more experience, she continued. But they had one critical weakness. They expected their enemies to behave logically. In his laboratory on Haven's Gate, Roy Mitchell was showing a group of alien prisoners how humans had turned their own technology against them. The aliens watched in horror as he demonstrated how a simple mining tool could be converted into a weapon that could punch through their best armor. "The secret," Roy explained to his alien audience, "is that we don't think like engineers. We think like humans." He picked up what looked like a broken communication device. "You see scrap metal. We see the components for a remote-controlled bomb." One of the alien prisoners, a scientist named Kethvel, spoke up. "But that is not what the device was designed for. You are using it incorrectly." Roy smiled. "That's exactly the point. You think there's a right way and a wrong way to use technology. We think there's whatever way works." The aliens had been so focused on building better weapons that they had forgotten the most important rule of warfare. The side that adapts fastest usually wins. In the underground tunnels beneath the main city, Sergeant Maria Santos was training a new generation of human fighters. The war was essentially over, but everyone knew there would be other threats in the future. "The most important lesson," she told her students, "is that humans are not like other species. We don't know when to quit." One of the students, a teenager named Alex who had lost his family in the alien bombardment, raised his hand. "But Sergeant, what if we're really outmatched? What if the enemy is stronger, faster, and smarter than us?" Maria thought about the past 6 months, about Captain Wright, who had held impossible positions with nothing but determination, about Private Walsh, who had survived behind enemy lines for weeks on contaminated water and pure stubbornness, about all the human soldiers who had kept fighting when any logical analysis said they should surrender. "Then we get creative," she said simply. War Prime Zethkar was learning this lesson firsthand in his cell on Chronospace. Colonel Harper had decided that instead of executing him, she would force him to watch human reconstruction efforts. Every day, he saw humans rebuilding their cities, using a mixture of their own technology and captured alien equipment. They were not just repairing the damage from the war, they were building something better. "Your people destroyed our colonies," Harper told him during one of her visits. "But you also gave us access to technology we never would have developed on our own." Zethkar watched as human engineers installed alien power systems in human buildings. The result was not elegant, but it was effective. "We are learning from this war," Harper continued. "When the next alien empire decides to attack humanity, we will be ready." The War Prime felt something he had never experienced before, the certainty that his species had awakened something they could not control. News of humanity's victory was spreading throughout the galaxy. Species that had been conquered by the Kethmori centuries ago were beginning their own rebellions. The unstoppable alien empire was facing uprisings on dozens of worlds. The Galactic Council, which had abandoned humanity at the beginning of the war, was now requesting emergency meetings. Ambassador Chen Wei had been busy for weeks, fielding calls from alien governments that suddenly wanted to be friends with the species that had done the impossible. President Victoria Stone stood in the rebuilt Capitol building on Earth, reading reports from across human space. The casualty numbers were staggering. 60% of all human military forces had been killed or wounded during the war, but humanity had survived. More than that, they had won. Madam President, her aide announced, the Galactic Council is requesting permission to send a diplomatic mission. Victoria looked out the window at the construction crews rebuilding the city, humans and alien prisoners working side by side, turning the ruins of war into something new. Tell them they're welcome to visit, she said, but make sure they understand the new rules. What rules, Madam President? Humanity is no longer just another minor species. We are the race that refused to lose. Anyone who wants to be our enemy should remember what happened to the last group that tried. On Kronos base, Colonel Harper was giving Zethkar one final lesson in human nature. She had brought him to the memorial wall, where the names of every human killed in the war were carved in stone. You wanted to teach us fear, she said, pointing to the thousands of names. Instead, you taught us that we are stronger than we thought. Zethkar looked at the memorial. Each name represented a human who had died rather than surrender. Each name was a reminder that this species would fight to the last person rather than accept defeat. Your empire conquered 43 races, Harper continued. But those races fought to live. We fought to win. That made all the difference. As the sun set over the rebuilt city, human children played in the streets where alien soldiers had once marched. They were building toys from pieces of alien technology, turning instruments of war into games and entertainment. Dr. Foster watched them and smiled. The children were already learning the most important human trait, the ability to take something designed to hurt them and turn it into something useful. In her final report, she wrote, "Humanity won this war not because we were stronger or smarter than our enemies. We won because when the universe told us we had to lose, we decided the universe was wrong. The war was over. Humanity had survived its first test as a galactic power, but more importantly, they had learned something about themselves that would serve them well in the future. When faced with impossible odds, humans don't calculate the probability of victory. They simply refuse to accept defeat. And sometimes, that refusal is enough to change the universe."